Thank you for being here. This is going to be an attempt for me to talk about systems thinking in about 10 minutes. I'm an engineer by training, and I've been working with systems all my life. So the reason why I thought this would be probably helpful is yes, it's for a course that I teach, but at the same time, I thought it would be helpful to all of us here to learn about and exchange ideas. From also talking about decision making and decision trees, randomness, and how all these things kind of come together to form one system, and how do we think about that? So therefore, I think the presentation of thinking in systems would probably be helpful in that regard. Before I start talking about thinking in system, I would like to ask the room, what is a system? When you hear system, what do you think of it? I would take like an answer or two just to get us started.
Holistic process of like inputs, something happens, and outputs.
Okay. Anyone else?
Like things or people working together.
Yeah. The definition that I feel more describing what is a system to me, both natural and human-made, is that a system is a set of elements or parts that are coherently organized and interconnected in a pattern or structure that produces a characteristic behavior. And that behavior, sometimes we call it a function if it's a man-made system, or a purpose if it's a human system, like our respiratory system or our digestive system or the ecosystem. And in this slide here, we'll start talking about what is systems thinking now that we know what is a system. And in my focus area that I study, decision making and problem solving and the impact on heuristics and biases, we tend to see business leaders, specifically, mostly engineers, sometimes trying to solve a problem. And what they do, they zoom in into a part and try to troubleshoot and diagnose to solve that problem. Sometimes those solutions will generate other problems. Why? Because we ignore the fact that that part that you're solving is a part of a whole. And that's what brings us to this next concept, which is emergence. Problems solved, sometimes those solutions will create an emergent problem that you didn't even expect. Therefore, for example, you have the treasury system trying to solve an economic problem, and then they create inflation. That's an emergent issue. Yeah, so in a nutshell, systems thinking is a way of looking at the world. It's about understanding how things are linked together and how they affect each other within a whole system. There is this concept of holism, like holistically looking at a picture instead of focusing at that one part. So in my conversation with business leaders, and what I notice is that the focus is on the bottom line. We make decisions to improve profit. We make decisions to solve this problem, which is related to profit. The bottom line was the main driver. And what they seem to be doing is this biased approach to solving problems, which is analytical, which is helpful and it's needed. But at the same time, we ignore where are we in this whole, world ecosystem that we operate in and how every part is connected. So for example, here, if we look at this and consider this a bank or institution, their objective or function is to create profit margin throughout their activities. But how do they connect to everything else in their, communities, for example? Consider this person as a farmer, and she actually has her daily job is to nurture the trees and the fruits that they create. And to that is connected animals in that ecosystem and how they help nurture the trees and also benefit from the fruits. And you can see that the existence of transportation can help that farmer sell better by actually transporting the goods to other markets and vice versa. And then if that person is educated, chances are they could do a better business and scale up to kind of improve their income. Therefore, the bank will benefit from that as well. So if we think about this in a system, and this is a very, I would say, simplistic way of explaining it, but I just wanted to kind of connect the dots and see how sometimes by not focusing only on the analytical part, we can see things in a holistic perspective. So the main goal of systems thinking is to shift our way of thinking. Instead of just looking at separate parts or simple cause and effect, systems thinking helps us see and understand the whole picture, the complex systems around us. Usually we notice the individual events, how when they happen and how they happen, or our reactions to them, without thinking about the larger picture. So therefore, we only solve one particular, maybe symptom sometimes, but we don't solve the big problem. And this is where bias will come into play, and how I see the latest presentation connect to this. So our conceptual models basically are our paradigms or frame of minds and how we see the world, our lenses, perspectives, background that we see the world through. And that actually shapes the way we think about everything that we see. And what we see and how we see the world determines how we act in it. And therefore, that creates a world, in which we live with others, and decisions we make and stuff we do impacts other, I would say, elements in the system as well. So, as we covered this far, systems thinking is essentially about how we view the world. It asks us to first look at our own understanding, to think about how we think about things. It's about knowing that our perspective is just one way to see things, and others might see the world differently. This way of thinking realizes that what we see isn't just out there as it is, but it's also shaped by our own ideas and beliefs. Everything we do in science, business, creative work, or just day to day living is influenced by our unique view of the world. That's why it's important to understand our own viewpoints and how they affect the way we interact with them. So basically, just to connect the dots and see how personal development is connected to system change. And I was going to go through frames of mind and how they change our way of looking at the world and how that impacts the change and expectations in the world. And how probably instead of problem solving, I suggest the idea of systems innovation or systems change. So instead of focusing on solving a problem, how about we think about the system that problem existing and try to make some modifications and changes. That was it.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Right. I will start to say, beautiful job weaving everyone's presentations together. Thank you. So do folks want to share like what felt effective and
Really good job. I mean, just impeccable, honestly. I think that from my perspective, I learned so much from this. I felt like I was having a conversation with you. You used a great ratio of text to images, so I was engaged with what you were saying rather than reading and following along. I felt like we were like walking down a trail and you were talking to me rather than sitting in a classroom and looking at a screen. So yeah, your language was great, your cadence, your tone. I thought this was really, really well done, and congrats on a really, really cool thing. Let me know when you're teaching because I want to take this.
Sure, thank you so much. I appreciate your feedback.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, I really liked how you applied like the systems thinking and zoomed into like why it matters, which is like if you're trying to diagnose a problem, which goes back into your decision sciences, IT work, like what you do, right? You could look at it as like, I just get inquiries and I solve the problem, but without assessing the system, then you actually can't solve, you might not be solving the right problem. So I thought that was really good. Opportunistic. I wish I would have heard more about that, but like, I think the 10-minute thing is, so yeah, I loved it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate that slide. That was the left right of the two stages to a system. That was really, in my mind, the visual really rung out of like thinking systematically rather than thinking in the nuance. So that was super helpful.
Thank you, Tony.
I like how you started by asking us, what is a system? And then kind of shared with us that there's actually a lot of definitions to it. And so it's worthwhile to share your definition so we know what we're talking about. I think that was like, I was kind of like, oh, we all know what systems are. This is just like a warm up. But I was like, oh, actually, that's really important in this context. And again, shows us what like the difference between like academic study and like specializing in something and just like some of the words that we use every day in conversation.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Joanne.
I just want to say quickly that I think this was definitely one that I would have rather been listening to in person, because I think just like seeing you in your presence, like I kind of got lost in the visual, not lost in the visuals because it was so aesthetically pleasing, but I think like your presence in the complement of like, I think you just could be a great lecturer without the slides, period. And so I think in person it would be even more effective. I don't know what modality you teach in normally, but yeah.
Thank you, Joanna. I appreciate it.
I just left wanting some tips on like how do I remind myself constantly to think in a systems level when I'm attacking problems than to imagine that I know the answer from my perspective. But yeah.